Aho! Bonjour! Hindi na way magnadok. Anin? Joyoji kondishnakas. Wabajiji dodam. Nindau. Nipisin and dojaba. Wabajiji dodam. Nindau. Hello there, all of my relatives. I am Joyo Jeek. I am of the Martin clan. I am from Nipissing territory. I would like to offer a huge thank you. Apajigumigwich. Gimijong Klahus. Thank you very much, Klahus. I hold my hands up to you for the privilege of holding space on your beautiful territory as an invited guest. I would like to speak about a couple of things today. I am unable to do much trolling on social media as I have no cellular service where I am staying. What I want to speak today about is how the settler supremacy has not even so much crept in, but swept right into British Columbia and its so-called activism. And it's just that. I would like to speak about a number of organizations and different groups per se, and stuff that I feel has to be addressed. And as we all know, quite often it is myself that's addressing it. What I plan to do today is speak nothing but truths, as so very often I do. I mean, no disrespect on a personal level to any first person or person of these territories. If anything I say seems disrespectful, it is perhaps just that it seems such. It is not intended to be disrespectful. However, sometimes truths sting, and they seem very hurtful. What I want to speak about is settler organizations that have infiltrated the front lines, mostly in and around so-called Vancouver, in that area. It has now trickled over what has become, I consider it, activism has become an industry and a trend. Now, the difference with myself, I don't consider myself an activist or a land and water defender like a lot of you people are considering yourselves now. As a first person, as an Anishinaabe Ogichida, I was placed here by the Creator with the responsibility of stewarding these lands. So what you settlers are calling activism is not something that I partake in. I partake in upholding my responsibility that the Creator placed on me. And I see some settler, not just influence, but as mentioned, supremacy within the front lines of what I'm going to consider activism as an industry. What I would like to address is groups like Extinction Rebellion. Groups, and I believe it's got some subsidiaries. Perhaps Save Old Growth is a part of Extinction Rebellion. The folks involved in the hunger strike. I'm going to touch base on that first, right here, right now. I would like to voice my objection to this very, very, very immature behavior. It's ridiculous. There is absolutely nothing I have seen that's so privileged in my life. As a first person, many, many, many nations are malnourished due to poverty caused by this colonial settler system. And here you people are, each and every one of you who are starving yourselves. How privileged do you feel you actually are to think that you are important enough that you can cause self-harm? This is not starving because you can't afford food. This is because you've decided you want to meet with a government official. And you feel that you are important enough that if you say you're going to starve yourself, that the government is going to stop and come and meet you. Could you imagine feeling that privileged, that empowered? We have 50 plus nations without potable drinking water for First People. They have been on a hunger strike for years and years due to gentrification, being impoverished, because of genocide. You don't see anybody stopping to help them. It's privilege, and it's privilege at its finest. It's ridiculous. Now, we're doing this to bring awareness to the last of the old growth trees. You settlers came here and took 97, let's say 98% of them trees. Your homes are decorated in them. Your shopping centers are made of them. Your grocery stores are made of them. Your yoga studios are made of them. Your health food stores are made of them. You settlers came here and you've destroyed 98%. And now, for some strange reason, you feel entitled to come and feel you should have a voice of what happens with the last 2%. You're wrong. You should have no say. You should take a direction of the people from the territories in which you're invading, and you should do that. Now, I'm going to touch on a couple other things. That being said, what I would like to touch on with that being said is I'm seeing a very, very growing trend, a very, very big growing trend of what I see happening that's no different than the Indian Act. That's enough, mister. That's enough. I don't need to bark. So what's happening is these groups like Extinction Rebellion, they have a handful of First People supporting them. They have managed to do the same thing as the colonial government, the rest of the white supremacists did. They handpick through, find the odd first person that will support them, and they use those people to achieve their agenda. Nothing could be more clear and more indicative of that right there than Fairy Creek blockade. Fairy Creek blockade has done just that. It's a white supremacist-led occupation that has caused tons and tons and tons of damage to our mother. It's actually running a deficit. There's nothing positive that you can say has come out of Fairy Creek blockade. But it's the same thing. Found one or two indigenous people, or a handful, even a dozen, and you get them to endorse what you're doing, and you run with it. That's exactly what's happening. Now, Save Old Growth. Another part of Extinction Rebellion, white supremacists, have decided that they should just cause havoc across the nations. I appreciate somebody standing for our mother. I do not appreciate somebody standing for our mother at the expense of our mother. I do not appreciate people standing for First People at the expense of First People. Now let me explain. This ties into the hunger strikes and all the other stuff, nonsense. White supremacist nonsense. You are not gaining any support. You're losing support in your initiatives, shutting traffic down with these occupations all over the place. I have vocally spoke out about these because I've had a number of people contact me thinking I'm involved in it. I've had indigenous people that are pissed at me thinking I'm involved in this. What you need to understand is when you shut down main arteries in the North Shore, when you shut down main arteries in these areas, there are reserves tucked away. If you shut down the Second Narrows Bridge, you landlock, I've said this before, 4 or 5 different reserves. The one down by Cap Mall, the Squamish. There's a couple down by Oasis Car Wash. There's a res down there. There's the Tsleil-Waututh. There's all these reservations with elders, knowledge keepers. That when you shut these places, shut these down, not only are you losing all the respect of the people that are actually supporting you, you're causing a major, major, major problem for the elders so that ambulance cannot get to them, so that fire cannot get to them. Police couldn't care less. But fire and ambulance are vital to those elderly people. More important than the 2-point-some% of the trees that are left. That's just the fucking sad truth of it. What you're doing, in my opinion, and I've said this before, is I think it's government infiltration causing these occupations. Because what's going to happen, and they're starting to do it, and I've said this already, is you're destroying it for Indigenous people in the future who want to stand for their rights. People like Wet'suwet'en, people like Tiny House, as much as my respect level is there. They're fighting Trans Mountain. All these Indigenous groups that are fighting the government, what you're doing as a settler group, running around the cities, causing havoc, causing more pollution, makes no sense, is they're going to enact new laws. They're going to be able to punish us harder. You keep causing problems and problems and problems, and people like even myself that support frontline actions and support civil disobedience, you turn us against you. And that's what you've done. That's what Save Old Growth has done. You guys have made it an absolute nightmare. You've turned many activists against activism in your industry called activism. And what you're doing is you're causing it so that the whole society is so angry at these occupations, when the government now, they're going to use this and say, hey, general public, we're going to bring in new laws so that if they come and glue themselves to a highway or shut down the highway, they'll face 5 years in prison. That way they won't do this no more. And they're right. They'll get their way. They'll bring in these laws, and you cowards will stop and you'll try some other maneuver. But what's going to happen is now, and us First People have no choice but to go onto those front lines and stand up to this government. We will all face further and worse than we have ever faced before because of your actions. It's wrong. I know you claim that you're doing this to help First People. How can you say you're helping First People when you guys are gathering millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars for your own agendas? And none of these are going to the people that need it, the First Peoples. How many millions of dollars have been gathered on the traditional territory of the Patchie people? And how many of Patchie children in the past week have had to go without their daily calorie intake or daily nutritional values met because they do not have money to eat? And here people are starving themselves to death. You should be ashamed of yourselves. Millions of dollars, and we still have Indigenous people without water. We're going to a front line knowing there's not a person at Fairy Creek. There's not a person at Save Old Growth. There's not a person in Extinction Rebellion that has not entered a front line knowing that there is risk of arrest and risk of punishment. You know that going in there. But yet you nonstop go in there, get arrested, and play, oh my God, poor me, they've mistreated me, and you need to send me money because we got to fight them in court, and it's going to cost millions of dollars. And it works. And you guys get millions and millions and millions of dollars and funding and support and the poor me's and the likes on all your social medias. But you go to a place called so-called Saskatchewan, where 95% of our federal female inmate prison population is First People. They're in there, they've had their children taken from them, and they're serving 2+ years in prison, for the most part, for the color of their skin. We have Indigenous people all over Turtle Island locked up unjustly. And here we are, this industry called activism is walking into something knowing that you're going to get a certain sentence, knowing you're going to get arrested. And you put yourself in that position, and then after it happens, you cry like a little fucking baby, and you ask for money, and you ask for sympathy, and you get poor me, poor me, poor me, poor me's. You should be ashamed of yourself. I am ashamed of myself. I've partaken in this nonsense. It's heartbreaking. It's ridiculous. And it's a disservice to our mother in the end. I'm going to ask of all of your groups, all of you settler-based activists, to start really considering, are you fighting for our mother, or you're fighting? That's the big fucking question. Because what I'm noticing, there's a lot more people fighting than fighting for our mother. And there's a very, very big difference. I'm not doing this to make friends. I'm not doing this for likes on social media. I'm not doing this for dollar bills. I'm honest about each of those things. Each of those things that we're thriving on is causing our mother harm. And until we can shoulder what we are doing to our mother, we shall not point fingers at what other people are doing. Because I can tell you, the settler-based crew that I know and have spent many days on front lines with, they actually live no differently than the corporates they are fighting. Therefore, it makes no sense. You cannot tell me that living in a city, consuming, balances with your activism. It doesn't. You're still drawing a deficit, so you're causing harm to our mother. And I'm here to speak out against it and bring yous up. That's what I'm here to do. I'm seeing so much appropriation. I've taken part in so much appropriation. What we need to understand and acknowledge more than anything is we go to these front lines and we never see the impoverished urban res youth folk. You never see any of them. It's kind of becoming bizarre to me that the people that we are out there gaining the poor me's about don't seem to be benefiting from our fight. We are out there saying, poor us, poor us, poor us, as we live like Canadians by our choice, our own fruition. While the ones that actually live in poverty on the reserves are struggling. We are using them to gain monetarily and to feed our egos. That's the truth. Whenever I go to the front lines, rarely am I seeing the displaced. We're all displaced, don't get me wrong. But the ones living without water, the ones really, really suffering, are never on the front lines, receiving any of that support that's actually for them. And the problem I'm struggling with, and what the gist of this whole video is you settlers that are big time taking from it. It's wrong. And I ask of you to start addressing it. When you're in Vancouver, so-called Vancouver, North Vancouver, this goes to people like you, Extinction Rebellion, Save Old Growth. You don't get permission from one person. Protocol has it that you should have 6. In our back home, 6 clan mothers. Permission. Guidance. Or Mindemoyen. What's happening in so-called British Columbia with your activism and your industry called activism is, like I've said, you're doing exactly what the Indian Act government did. You found yourselves a handful and you're running with it. And I smell it from a mile away. And what's happening is you're putting people on pedestals like myself. I can speak of this because I have experience in this. But people like myself that actually do not and have not earned any respect or any hierarchy within First People, and you're putting me up as an Indigenous leader, and you're using this, and then you get them to do what you want to do. You want to. That's exactly what's happening at places like Fairy Creek, at places like North Vancouver, so-called North Vancouver. It's a scheme, and it's for your agenda. So once again, I'm going to ask you, open your eyes. Is what you're doing good for our mother, or is it harming our mother? Are you fighting, or you're fighting for our mother? Two very different things, very distinct different things. It's gonna wrap it up. I've rambled on long enough. I hope I've made myself somewhat clear. Apajigo miigwech bizandoyeg. Thank you very much for listening. Bamapi. Till we speak again.